to see them lose them.
I call Alfred Naro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to take the final call in this first reading around the bill this morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I first of all just want to quote from the Housing Corporation Act of 1974. One of its key functions is this, Mr. Speaker, 2A. The corporation's function include providing rental housing principally for those who need it most. Mr. Speaker, for those who need it most. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that in acknowledging all the contributions, those who are opposing this bill and those who are supporting this bill, because at the end of the day, we all agree that where there is need and those who need it most, we should meet that need. And we'll be holding each other accountable at the things we've done in the past, but we're now in the present and heading into the future. Mr. Speaker, what our communities want to hear is what this will do to make a difference. Mr. Speaker, it's really clear that when we've gone out into our communities, and I was over at the Mangere Housing New Zealand office, meeting with the new team leader there, Stacey Herbert. We talked about the issues and the challenges. I went out with Monty Cecilia over in Mangere. We went out to some of the boarding houses. We began to see some of the challenges that they were facing. Mr. Speaker, I know and we know that the needs are there. But, Mr. Speaker, what this bill is trying to do is this very thing, Mr. Speaker. It's not trying to kick people out. It's not trying to say that, if you've got a need that we won't meet that. But what it is doing, Mr. Speaker, is that in one sense, for those who need it most, should provide that. There is a waiting list that is there. Talking to Stacey Herbert, there are many who are in great need who can't access those homes. The very homes, the very needs that the opposition are talking about. So what will this bill do? Well, with the reviewable tenancies inside of this bill to all tenants, what that means that those who don't need it can now move on to provide for those who do. That's the simple fact of what it's trying to do. Mr. Speaker, we've been accused that we've been the right-wing Tories, the people who don't care for people. In fact, they've called us the rich to the poor. Well, many of us, if not all of us, have come from livings where we've had to make a living, worked hard to be where we're at today. We know what it takes. We know what it takes. Mr. Speaker, for those that may not have read it on the opposition, it's called Home and House. It's a vision for social housing in New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, what it clearly says is this, is that a shelter is one of the most basic human needs, but a home is much more than just a place where you hang your hat on. Mr. Speaker, in 2009, there was an accommodation review. There was an opportunity to see, for those who could move on, around about 2,500 were actually reviewed and researched, and the question was asked is about whether they could afford the income threshold to meet the opportunities for home ownership. Out of 2,500, only five were able to. Mr. Speaker, so what do we do then? Do we then allow them to stay where they are? No, Mr. Speaker. What we want to do is provide those opportunities. So for those who are on the Housing Shareholders Advisory Group, people like Alan Jackson, who's the chair, Major Campbell Roberts from Salvation Army, Andrew Boddy, who's the director of Crown Fibre, Martin Newdale, independent consultant in housing, Diane Robertson from the head of Auckland City Mission, Brian Donnelly, executive director of New Zealand Housing, Paul White from Toria Tai Consultants. All of these people who work in communities, who are part of the Salvation Army, this was their recommendation, Mr. Speaker, that we should have reviewable tenancies for all tenants. For all tenants. And I want to finish off with this, Mrs. Mackey, is this. We act with common sense. We're not going to go out and kick people out on the streets, as you've said. We don't. Why? Because we know. I know the community that I work with. I know the people that are there. That's not the intent of this. But what this is to give them sense, a hope of a future, of an opportunity. We know about what it means about transients. In my community where I've worked in, we've seen the impact that it has. But here's a greater thing, Mrs. Mackey. What about the opportunities for them for home ownership? What about the opportunities for them to do better for themselves, to stop true transients? So, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill. I look forward to Select Committee, to having, and I hope that Mrs. Mackey will second herself onto the committee and we'll have robust discussion, because at the moment we haven't heard a lot from some of the other Auckland MPs, but we look forward to this. I commend this bill to the House.
Members, this debate has concluded. Order. Order. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The party vote's called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First,
7 votes opposed.
Māori Party,
2 votes in favour.
Mana,
1 opposed.
ACT New Zealand,
1 vote in favour.
United Future,
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan,
1 opposed.
Members, the ayes are 63, the noes are 56. The motion is agreed to.
Social Housing Reform, Housing Restructuring and Tenancy Matters Amendment Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Social Housing Reform, Housing Restructuring and Tenancies Matters Amendment Bill be considered by the Social Services Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Social Housing Reform, Housing Restructuring and Tenancy Matters Amendment Bill be reported to the House by the 1st of October 2013.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, I move that the New Zealand Public Health and Disability Amendment Bill number 2 be now read